the car when it dies and you can't figure out why.
Yep. Just gonna do it over. Well, I'm not starting from the beginning. I'm just gonna, you know.
Right.
All right. Hello, we're live again. Sorry about that. My computer crashed as predictably as the sunrise. And I'm afraid that if you're on Rumble, I don't know what to do. So you might be screwed. I apologize.
Yeah.
Because Rumble, it's like you can't, there's like a little bit of a delay between when you a stream cuts out and when the next one starts. So I'm not going to be able to set that one up, and I'm sorry. Same thing with Kick. It's just gone. Sorry. Oh no, Kick is back. Okay, good.
Yeah, it looks like Kick didn't go down. It looks like YouTube and Facebook went down. But Kick was fine. So
Yeah, okay. Let me just look at my content here. Yeah, that one, the Rumble one is a done deal. So I'm gonna delete it because it's amateur hour over there. So, but if you're watching on YouTube, we're back. So,
yeah.
and again, I'm sorry. I don't know what the problem is. I thought it was hardware. I thought it was RAM. I thought it was some kind of setting. I don't know. So I can't do anything about it without being on the phone with, you know, the people who built this machine to fix it. But we're just going to do what we can. So if this crashes again, then there's no news show. I'm not going to do it. So you can holler at Allison if you want to. I'll try to like get it running for a patron show, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to because my other machine is like sitting over there. It would take me like an hour to set it up to like
Yeah.
have it like be somewhat runnable. So my old machine, that is. So yeah, until this one gets fixed, this is just where I'm at right now. So I'm sorry, guys, and I'm sorry for all of the rigmarole, but we're gonna get into the story. We're just gonna pick up from where we left off. So,
Okay.
Michael Madsen, go ahead, Hannah.
So the point I wanted to make about this is that this is happening to a lot of the older end of Gen X, and it is a step back from how the boomers and the generations just previous did in terms of life expectancy. And I think a significant amount of it is a result of so many men going through divorces and having to work harder to support ex-wives and families and pay their bills. Um, Historically, men and women worked together. Uh, Prior to a lot of changes in laws that kept children out of the workplace and really limited what children could do, the whole family would often work together. If dad worked in the mine, the whole family worked in the mine. If dad was a farmer, the whole family was farmers. You know, if dad ran a grocery store, the whole family was grocers. The whole family did work. If dad was a baker, the whole family were bakers, and so on. And so you had support in your home. And women today that complain about doing labor at work and then coming home and doing housework. Historically, women did that without electric washing machines and electric stoves or even gas stoves. You know, back in the day, it was a wood burning stove. Historically, women supported their husbands, women supported the men in their lives, and men lived longer because of that. Now, obviously, there were things historically that shortened everybody's lifespan, disease that we couldn't treat, um, poor diet when poverty hit, and so on. But we don't have an excuse for those things today. Right? We have modern medicine. We have modern understandings of dietary needs, which the boomer generation and Gen X were lied to about and probably had an effect on all of us. But it's vital to men's survival that they have the support of the women in their lives and not animosity not castigation, not constant demands, but working side by side, even if it's in different ways, even if you're not doing the same job now. And now women really don't have an excuse to not get stuff done. And this is hate to say it, but it looks like, with 3 marriages, that's 2 divorces. Every divorce takes years off your life. And I'm sure that had an effect.
Yeah. We don't really know. Like I said, he seemed like this kind of person that, you know, just kind of like dealt with life. I mean, he had, some say it was the alcohol. I don't know, um, because like it just seems like a bit of a cop out, and I don't think
Well,
anything is really that simple.
alcohol
But
can be a contributing factor, but stress can be a huge contributing factor in how much somebody drinks too.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And as far as I know, what the audience missed the first time round was my favorite quote of Michael Madsen that I found of his, which was, quote, "I wrote a poem on my leg once, on the skin," end quote. I have no idea what the context is there, or if there even is any context, like as opposed to the bone. But whatever, it made me lol, and I don't often lol. It takes a moment of surrealist genius to make this old soul chuckle. So thank you, Mr. Madsen, for putting a smile on my face, even in death. Your death, I mean, not mine. But maybe mine too. Maybe I'll see you up there, Mr. Madsen, or down there. I would hope hell is reserved for the people on Epstein's client list and the people pretending it doesn't exist. On that matter, Michael, I think you and I are probably kosher, for want of a better word. And I think I should stop there, so I will.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're gonna move on to the next story. I just don't want to go too late. So, incels are in the news again, and France is on the attack. In July of 2025, France's anti-terrorism task force, led by the National Anti-Terrorist Prosecutor's Office, PNAT, I got to do something about that acronym, launched its first investigation targeting an 18-year-old man identified as Timothy G, linked to the, quote, incel, quote, end quote, movement. Arrested near a high school in Saint Frien, Saint Etienne, with 2 knives. He was charged with terrorist criminal conspiracy for allegedly planning attacks on women driven by misogynistic incel ideology that blames women for romantic and social rejections. This marks the first time French authorities have treated incel-related activities as a potential terrorist threat, reflecting growing concerns over the movement's violent rhetoric and its overlap with masculinism. This is what they call it, masculinism, which apparently advocates male supremacy and traditional gender roles. The incel movement, part of the broader manosphere, has gained attention for its toxic online subculture where young men express resentment and sometimes advocate violence against women. French authorities, though, through the DGSI, Domestic Intelligence Agency, are responding to rising what they call masculinist discourse amplified by social media platforms like TikTok. As noted in a 2024 High Council for Equality report. Oh my God, that sounds so bad. The High Council for Equality report, highlighting increased sexist attitudes amongst young men. You may sit on this council, but you will not be given the title of misogynist. While the incel community lacks a formal structure, making it hard to track its ideological ties to supposed far-right extremism and past violent incidents, have prompted France to classify such gender-based violence as a terrorism concern, setting a precedent in the EU.
So before we get into um, just the stupidity of this article, I want to point something out. And we learned in, I want to say 2017, it was proved that intelligence agencies in Western nations manipulate people like this into committing crimes from within their own forums. And in particular, the intelligence agencies of the United States do this. And we can never be sure that that's not the case in any single incident, regardless of who the perpetrator is, regardless of what the details are, whether they were stopped or not, and so on. We can never be sure that the individual in question is not a person with a mental health condition that made them vulnerable to manipulation, that was pushed into what the state wanted to use as an excuse for some new regulation or legislation that will take away people's freedoms and so on. Because we know for an undeniable fact, because it has been admitted by the agencies themselves that they do this. We know for an undeniable fact that, because it has been determined in courtrooms as well, that this does happen as a result of that type of interference. We never know in a case like this that didn't happen, and we never know whether it did happen. What we do know is there has been a considerable push by governments and by establishment feminists, establishment media, entertainment media. Like, it's been establishment wide, right? And it's been hot and heavy and long term to demonize young men who are the losers in the dating game, basically. The men who are the 80% that don't get picked until all the best men have been picked over, and the cougars are getting desperate, right? And that's basically where the next percentage of young men get their first date is from some older woman who can't get a man her age because she has hit the wall, right? And so before people get on board with this idea that, oh gosh, there's something going on with the incels, so we gotta do something about this, we've got to disavow and blah blah blah, bullshit, right? The overwhelming majority of incels are just young men who are sad over their circumstances and are commiserating together. And yeah, when you have figured out that life has dumped the biggest pile of shit in your lap, in terms of your ability to find somebody, to not be lonely, to reproduce and so on, you're going to get bitter, and you're going to say bitter things. And saying bitter things does not have anything to do with whether or not somebody acts on them, right? It's not ever a normal person. It's not ever one of the majority of a group that acts on stuff like this. And they do discourage each other from violence. They do discourage each other from suicide. And it's really dishonest and predictable that this establishment push for everyone else to hate them, to isolate them further, to alienate them further, to affect their mental health worse than it's already been affected by their circumstances, and then use the damage that their narratives are doing to these young men as a means of enacting some form of legislation to control men in order to avoid any kind of social uprising, even if it's just a democratic election of somebody that the establishment disapproves, like happened here in the United States. And I think that's the real target here. Is it has nothing to do with incels. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with concerns about violence. It has everything to do with concerns about the establishment not having an iron grip and not being able to use women as a means to have an iron grip on the populace. I just hope this backfires spectacularly on them.
All right, Mike.
Yeah. Do you ever wonder what normies make of the term incel? And by normies, I mean, people who watch TV, maybe read the newspapers, and are largely unaware of this underground internet culture that us spurgs are also excited about. I don't know many of these normies, and I'm too afraid to ask what they might understand by the term incel, because I might well get an answer along the lines of, incels, it's some kind of misogyny cult, right? And then you'd have to ask, do you know what it means? Incel, do you know what it's short for? It's short for something. Yes, it's short for involuntarily celibate. Do you know what that means? It kind of sounds like it means virgin. Yes, it basically does. It means male virgins. Funny how female virgins are considered the highest currency in the purity economy, literally everywhere in the world, while male virgins are, checks notes, proscribed as terrorists. This is a very odd thing to happen in a patriarchy. I never have these conversations with normies, like IRL, but this is how I imagine those conversations going down in my head, whereas in reality, I'm not going to get to say any of that shit, because somewhere in the vicinity, there'll be a blue-haired Karen bouncing into the conversation going, actually, incels are not the same as virgins. Some incels have had sex before, but they're not having it now. So what you're saying is a total overgeneralization and a lie. Oh, but incels really do hate women. Yes, they literally just hate women. That's all they do. And with engine precision, the blue-haired Karen will have every normie in the vicinity befuddled over what the difference even is between a man who wants a sexual relationship but has not yet found one, and a man who is in a misogynist terrorist organization. This is what the term incel represents. It means if you are a man who is not currently being blessed with the physically anointed approval of one or more women, then you are evil and violent, and you must be rounded up and shot. Needless to say, if you are being anointed by the touch of a woman, you had better not displease that woman at any point for any reason, or you too will be rounded up and shot. As a man at this point, you are quite literally damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like, I'm old enough to remember a time before this word incel was bandied about. I think it came about at or around 2014, when that quote-unquote supreme gentleman did all them unalivings that we're not allowed to reference. And it's not as though that was the point in history when undersexed men became problematic. That was the point in history when the feminist industrial complex decided that the number one threat against women was the men who are not having sex with women, the men who are not in official relationships with women, the men who are not presently ensnared in a parasitic relationship in which their time and money and patience are being siphoned into the capricious desires of some ratchet hoe and the ideology that represents them. You'd better not be attracted to women. That's the male gaze. That's oppressive, and we'll get you arrested for it. And by the way, you'd better not fail to attract any women, That's inceldom, and it's terrorism, and will get you arrested for it. I don't know how to explain this situation to a normie. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Like it's far too cartoonishly evil to ever happen in real life, especially since the TV keeps telling us that there's no way it could ever happen and that it's actually men who have unreasonable standards for women. It's that way around, and that's the only way around it will ever be. And the TV wouldn't lie. Human beings would lie, but official sources do not. My family members would lie to me, but the screen on the wall is, I mean, why would it be there if it wasn't telling the truth? It's a good question, Normie. Let's just not talk about it, yeah? Let's just watch our favorite movies. It'll be fine. Let's just watch the football. Did you see that ludicrous display last night? The thing about Arsenal's, they always try to walk it in. Yeah. Let's just enjoy life, can we? I'm tired.
I want to watch Reservoir Dogs.
I have a question.
Lauren's here.
It's Lauren.
Hi, Lauren is here. Hi. What do you call women who are not celibate and actively having sex, who also hate women? Oh wait, it's a pick-me. We're pick-me's, and that's because you fucking bitches don't want to be chosen. What is the fucking point of that? You don't want men? Okay, fine. Fuck right off. Just go and be lesbians, and let's see how those relationships go, right? Because men are so fucking horrible. Oh my god. All right, I'm done.
All right.
I'm also done.
Take your hand out of Mike's butt so that he can talk. Yeah, so I mean, this is not surprising. It's easy to go after essentially the lowest, and I don't say this to attack incels, but like they're in a really bad place and they're the most in need of help, and yet we basically respond by putting them under a terrorist watch list. And then they're like, at the same time, these people be like, so why don't men talk about their feelings more? So yeah, and I mean,
well, because when they do, women write articles about how dangerous and scary they are because they have feelings that are disapproved by women.
Yeah, they call it man keeping, which is essentially like, having to care for men when they're in an emotionally fragile state. You know that, right? That's the new feminist thing is man keeping, which is like housekeeping. But
yeah, well, think about it this way, though. Think about it this way, all right? If men say it really hurts us if our marriage fails, our children are taken away from us and we're told we're the less important parent and we don't get time to parent them. We worry about them. We fear how they're going to turn out. We have valid reason because look at these statistics. And it's painful to not get to see family members who you love, except for a couple times a month for a few hours a day, because your ex-wife can get away with allowing that, with doing that to them. It's painful when your ex-wife alienates your children from you, tells them that, oh, she's not withholding visitation. You just didn't want to see them because you don't love them anymore, because you don't love her anymore. And men are dying because of this. They are committing suicide over this. And when the men's rights movement talks about this, we get, oh, look at the whiny man. Look at the man feeling, mansplaining. Oh, it's just so terrible for you. Women get raped. That's so much worse. Even if it only takes, 5 or 10 minutes to happen. Whereas losing your children is for a lifetime, right? Men are committing suicide over this. They're committing suicide over losing their place in society. They're committing suicide over not being able to pay the bills. They're ending up homeless in higher numbers. They're ending up in mental health crises in higher numbers. And yeah, every so often, one of them instead of imploding, explodes and hurts other people. And then you pay attention and you're like, oh, look at the scary man. All men are scary. Don't tell us that men should express their feelings if you're not going to fucking listen when they do and give them help instead of castigation.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I did get a super chow a couple days ago. I might as well read it out now. By the One Good Man gave us $5 and said, if a man speaks in the forest and there's no woman to hear him, is she still the victim? Well, obviously the answer is yes. So thank you for that. And let us know what you guys think about this from the comment. Again, if you want to send us a super chow, go to feedthebachelor.com/just the tip. It's a little bit better than a super chat. It lets you say whatever you want, and you can write longer messages, and we get more of the money, and doesn't like get, YouTube takes like half or more than half of the super chats. So if you don't want to give Google your money, I understand. So you can go to feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip, and there's a link in the description if you want to type all that shit out. All right. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. All right. In July of 2025, Sean Diddy Combs was acquitted of the most serious charges, so not all the charges, racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, in a high-profile federal trial in New York City, but convicted on 2 lesser counts of transportation to engage in prostitution involving ex-girlfriends Cassie Ventura and an anonymous woman known as Jane. The 7-week trial, which captivated public attention, centered on allegations that Combs coerced women into drug-fueled sexual performances called freak-offs, with prosecutors claiming he ran a criminal enterprise to facilitate the acts. The defense, led by Mark Agnifilo, yeah, that's how you say it, and Agnifilo, argued that Combs's actions, while morally flawed, did not constitute organized crime. So basically, it was wrong, but not illegal. Emphasizing his relationships were consensual despite admitted domestic violence. The jury split verdict reached after over 2 days of deliberation, cleared Combs of charges that could have led to a life sentence, marking a significant legal victory for Combs. Despite these acquittals, though, Combs remains in custody awaiting sentencing, potentially facing up to 20 years for the other charges, prostitution-related convictions, though prosecutors have suggested a sentence of about 4 to 5 years, with a proposed sentencing date of October 3rd, 2025. Judge Arun Subramanian denied bail, citing Combs's history of violence and a risk of flight due to his wealth. The trial exposed disturbing details of Combs's behavior, including physical abuse captured on 2016 hotel surveillance footage of Ventura, which I think everybody's seen that footage way back when it happened, and drew criticism for highlighting systemic issues in addressing sexual misconduct by powerful figures, feminist logic. Combs's legal team celebrated the outcome as a triumph of the jury system, while supporters, including fellow inmates at Brooklyn's federal lockup, reportedly gave him a standing ovation, viewing his partial acquittal as a rare win against the government. So Diddy acquittee.
So I've got a couple of things to say about this.
As do I. Sorry.
Lauren's in charge now. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I've taken over.
That's women for you.
Right. Hey.
The first thing is I'm going to read Meredith G's super chow because I think it's really relevant to what I'm going to say here. So Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR News 510, honey for the Badgers. I don't want to be viewed as a Diddy apologist. Not a fan of his music, and I think the man is awful. But, and we don't really need the big but. Like nobody cares. I mean, people care, but nobody cares about that matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter if people think you're a Diddy apologist, but the point stands regardless. The reason his case was important is that the prosecutors were using creative feminist legal theory to try and make their case. They had the ability to make a valid racketeering case, but chose not to because it would have implicated other defendants the prosecutors wanted to protect. Right? No one who was reasonable would want a conviction of Diddy to codify feminist legal theory into case law. And this is one of the points I'm going to make, right? Prosecutors play dirty pool more than they play a clean game. All right, they fight dirty, they play dirty. Yes, actually, Richard Beer, I do have a big butt now. I actually need to remove some of it. But the bottom line with cases like this is you can never trust the outcome, and it's fair to say that the acquittal indicates that things were not as the media was describing them. That's fair and correct. But there was evidence that came out to the public that indicated that the prosecutors really fucked up with this case. There were things that they could have done that they didn't do because they were trying to promote feminist legal theory. And there were victories that they could have had that they didn't have because they were trying to. Now, why would they want to promote feminist legal theory? Why would they want to get that codified into case law? Because it makes it easier to convict the innocent. Mm-hmm. And this is a sad fact about American prosecutors. From, the simplest, most straightforward, Matlock looking kind of, old geezer from the 80s that is still plugging along as a prosecutor, to the highest level politicians that have been prosecutors and then moved on to become senators, congressmen, governors, to run for president. We had a prosecutor as our president and a prosecutor as our vice president during the last administration. And it was a disaster for the whole country, right? A prosecutor wrote the 3 biggest attacks that hit due process rights in the 20th century. That was Joe Biden, right? And a prosecutor that was vice president got into her position after getting away with hiding exculpatory evidence in order to keep someone on death row in California. That was Kamala Harris. And we have seen prosecutors go after men when they know the man is innocent. I've sat in a courtroom personally and listened to a prosecutor argue the following bullshit, right? Oh, yes, we didn't give this man a fair trial in his first hearing, right? We didn't give him a fair trial, and we denied him his right to representation, to legal representation. We withheld exculpatory evidence, and we railroaded him. And then we psychologically abused him in the system, and we punished him for resisting the psychological abuse. And we did that for almost a decade while he's been fighting his case. But you know what? Res judicata. You know what res judicata means? It's already been decided. We made up our minds. And so therefore, he doesn't get a chance at justice because we've been having this fight for so long. We've been kicking him for so long that we feel that we have the right to put our boot on his back and keep him down. And that prosecutor literally drove that young man crazy. Like, he had very overt symptoms of mental health conditions the last he engaged in any contact with any of us, and went on to display numerous mental health symptoms that we couldn't do anything about because he broke off contact with us, with everybody that could help him. I mean, that is what the court system does to men under this use of feminist legal theory and feminist jurisprudence.
Yeah.
That if a woman makes an allegation That it's not the prosecutor's job or the job of the police officers to get to the bottom of it, find the truth, and act upon the truth in order to create a just outcome. It's their
Yeah.
job to get the guy. That is
Yeah.
what they believe.
Yeah, exactly. And I would like to point out very clearly here that, Cassie, we want to look at Cassie as the victim because we have that one video of, her being beaten, in that hotel room. But let's be fucking clear. Cassie was the one who was reaching out to these people and trying to get sex, right? Like she was the one who was facilitating this whole thing. And not the whole thing, right? But like she was also a part of this, right? But she's not being brought up on charges. No, because she's a victim. She's a victim. She got hit, and oh my God. And now listen, I don't think that she should have been beaten or hit or whatever the hell happened to her. None of that should have happened to her, right? But she is just as liable for the things that they are trying to bring him up on charges for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and but there's no talk about her her compliance, her in any of
the
this.
consensual part, like we don't
Well,
know how consensual things are.
Well, I mean,
Well, here's
look
the
at the
thing.
Giango Meshi thing, where like there's like women that want dudes to choke them and shit, and then they come out later and they accuse them of stuff, and now it looks bad, but like we don't know what they're into.
Exactly. You know what I mean? This was the one. Cassie is the one that was getting pissed on, and she's got all these fucking sores in her mouth, and you know what I mean? She is compliant in all of this, but they're not bringing her up on charges, right? And I also want to say that the charges that he was brought up on were just, I mean, it was flimsy to begin with. I mean, Rico,
Yeah, really?
You can't. Rico doesn't involve just one person. You know what I mean? So how are we here with this? And I don't want to liken this to other Black men that have been taken down by the system, but look at what's happening. I mean, it really does. Oh my God! It just makes you think that they are just trying to bring him down. And I will say on this that they are trying to bring him up on charges. They're trying to get him in jail. They're trying to accuse him of these things. And I'm not saying that he's not guilty of certain things, right? There's plenty more things that he's done that he should be brought to jail for, right? He should be brought up on charges for, but he'll never, they'll never do that. But,
not unless they can use him to codify feminist theory into law.
Yeah, exactly. But there are people who are complicit in this entire scandal who do not want their names brought to light, right? So Diddy feels like the fall guy.
He really is. What you're looking at here is the accountability gap. All right. And I'm going to point some things out. There are, like, some of the Diddy parties took place in California, right? There's 168 domestic violence programs located in 109 cities in California. All right. Some of them took place in New York. New York also has 120 domestic violence programs located in 69 cities. Do you know how small New York is compared to California? Like she had ample opportunity in either one of those locations. There are domestic violence shelters in France where some of these parties took place. There are domestic violence shelters all over the United States. They are networked with each other in various ways. They could have, if she wanted out, all she had to do was get in touch with one of those programs. They could have whisked her away to some Midwest no place community where nobody would have known where she was, and she would have had a chance to recover if she was the victim, right? If this was not a consensual relationship, and if the violence was not a consensual part of the relationship that she stuck around for because she wanted all of the other aspects of the relationship. Right. That is the first thing. Right. The second thing is when it comes to human trafficking, whether it's for localized prostitution or selling women into slavery or selling men and boys into labor and sex slavery, in various areas, women are a major component and often are in charge. And then they turn around and they plea bargain their cases by pointing the finger at the men who act as the heavies when it comes to the individuals that are being trafficked. And say, he made me do it. I was abused. I couldn't escape. Feminists have been working for 60 years to try to make it so that women can leave relationships of any kind with men, take every penny that existed in the relationship with them, and walk away as unscathed as humanly possible. Right? So obviously feminists fail at that. Or else the whole thing is about codifying feminist legal theory into case law. And women cannot have agency if you want to do that.
Exactly. They do that. They do that meme, you know, the girl with the blonde girl with the two pigtails, the little girl, and she's what? Me? What do you mean?
Are you talking about me?
Yes. Yep. Yes, we are talking about you, bitch. We're talking about you. We're talking about you and everything that you had to fucking do with all of this, because you know we act like men are just you know, they act alone, right? Like there's not any kind of complicity with the women who they engage with, you know. And if that was the case, then it would be rape, it would be sexual assault, and those would be the charges that we would be bringing this man upon, right? But that's not what's happening. We're talking about sex trafficking, and you know, again, Cassie would be just as liable for those charges because she was contacting the Johns, right? She enjoyed it. She was looking forward to these engagements, right? But no, she got hit in the face. She got beat down. So she's a victim. And that's the only thing that the public will see, is that she was a victim because Diddy hit her. And again, I just want to be 1000% clear. I do not agree that she should have gotten hands put upon her. That's just not. No, keep your fucking hands to yourself. I don't know how many times I gotta say this. Keep your fucking hands to yourself, right? But at the same time, well, not but and at the same time, you cannot tell me that this man is guilty of sex trafficking when Cassie did the exact same fucking thing.
All right. That's fair. Thank you for your thoughts. All I would say is
we ain't done yet.
We ain't done yet.
Oh, we're not
done
done? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I've got some shit to say.
Okay.
I've got to wait until Lauren gets out of my seat so I can get back in.
This is my seat.
It is technically her seat, but I'm fucking using it, and
I'm drinking your drink.
And she's drinking my drink now. But wait, where are we? What was I going to say? Oh yeah,
Epstein. Yes.
Something Epstein.
Something. Fuck that guy.
I like how we're skating around the subject everyone's talking about without addressing it as an official story. But it really has to be addressed now that we're on the subject of sex trafficking. Look, the Hollywood elites can do what they like. The music industry elites can do what they like. And the political elites can do what they like. And they will never be held accountable because if they are, they will kill everybody. And as I've said before, these are the American equivalents of royalty. You'll like to think you escaped the tyranny of royalty, but all you did was anoint others as de facto royalty. Prince Andrew is probably just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Epstein thing. Every royal scumbag under the sun is probably embroiled in these kinds of sex crimes, and they will always get away with it because it's practically impossible to arrest or convict royalty unless you are a higher ranking of royalty. Like Richard III could easily kill his nephews, and it'll be hundreds of years before anyone's allowed to talk about the remote outside possibility that he did that. And it needs to be said, the fact that you swapped out monarchy for republicanism doesn't change shit. You can kill Epstein, you can jail Maxwell, you can put Diddy through a show trial that doesn't do shit, and it will be literally hundreds of years before anyone even starts to seriously investigate the truth. And by then, it'll be too late. You'll have already moved on to an even more corrupt system that has long since set up the barriers to prevent the current ruling class from ever facing consequences for the mad shit they do for like thousands of years. So yeah, you won't get closure on the atrocities that defined your generation, nor will your children or your grandchildren or your great-great-great-great-grandchildren or whatever. The people who rule you will commit all of the most heinous acts of inhumanity you can imagine, and they will get away with it. It's not sorry if I'm black-pilling anyone, but I tried white-pilling everyone. I tried saying the Trump administration is going to bring these elite nonce networks to justice in the hope that it would bring people hope, but it didn't. It's the same story over and over again. These people hate you, and they will do whatever they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. But maybe there is more than nothing. I mean, the Diddy situation is a shot across the bow for anyone who thinks they can get away with raping a bunch of people. Yeah, Diddy and his fucking mistress got away with it, but maybe you won't. Just like the Epstein situation is a shot many miles from the bow for anyone who thinks they can blackmail hundreds of elites. The elites got away with it, but Epstein didn't. Maxwell didn't. This has a good chance of getting through to the potential Epsteins and Maxwells of the future. And maybe, just maybe, it'll get through to the elites of the future. Like, don't fuck people on boats. Don't just exploit people whom you've been coaxed into exploiting by an untouchable socialite and an untouchable Jew. All right? It's okay to be rich. It's okay to be influential. Just don't fuck whoever you're told you can fuck. It's not good for you, and it's certainly not good for the underage sex slaves you're fucking. Just make your money. Make your money and then fuck off. Don't just assume that because you're rich and influential, you can fuck whoever you like. I know it worked out this time. I know even the Trump administration couldn't get to you because even the Trump administration is not as deathly powerful as the deep state. But next time, you might not be so lucky. Next time, the deep state might get worn down a little more. And the time after that, a little more still, and maybe the armor will finally crack So, yeah, the moral of the story is just stop fucking children, okay? You don't need to fuck children. One of these days, you might just get a government that does its job and punishes you for fucking children. We can only hope. And you can only stop fucking children. Let's meet in the middle, yeah? If you rich elites stop fucking children, then maybe the government will stop taxing you up the ass for everything except the children you fuck. This is not just a tangent. Frankly, it's a non sequitur. I'm just clutching at straws at the moment. But maybe, just maybe, we could work together. Make all the money you like. Just stop raping children. This is where libertarianism and authoritarianism can finally come together, folks. Make all the money you like. Just stop fucking children. Can I get a holler? Can any nigga get a holler for that proposal? Because I'm shouting out for now. Fill your boots with all the money in the world. Just don't fuck children. That's my manifesto. And it is a hill on which I will die for the 1,000th time. You'd think I'd be sick of dying on hills by now, but I'm not. I'm rather enjoying it. Death is quite fun once you get used to it. And hills are quite fun too if you're into hiking. All right. Let's fucking go! Die on the hills! Die on all the hills. Live on all the hills. I'm going to keep going until someone interrupts me and tells me to stop dying on hills. But I'll keep dying on hills with God as my mistress.
Don't stop dying on hills.
You would think that this would be something feminists would care about, right? But I just want to remind everybody, when #MeToo started in 2017, I believe, not when feminists like to say it started, but when #MeToo started, okay, the first thing that feminists did in that hashtag was castigate anyone who was talking about any sexual abuse other than an adult man abusing a woman or a girl. And if we talked about the Hollywood elite molesting children, it was start your own hashtag. And if we talked about women abusing men or boys, it was start your own hashtag. So those hashtags got started. And what did the feminists of #MeToo do? But invade those hashtags and then create the hashtag #himthough to complain that other acts of sexual abuse that are intricately involved in the creation of adult abusers who do abuse women were being discussed as equally important in getting attention that they so badly wanted to just have on themselves. That's how feminists approach this issue. They don't care about the people involved. They don't care about any actual victims. They just care about the politics and the attention and the money.
Well, all I will say is, with regards to the Diddy thing and the Epstein thing, no matter what the establishment tries to do, no matter what messaging people put out there, it's irrelevant because the conversation is taking place and the truth is going to come out eventually. So I'm happy that people are upset about this. This is what needs to happen. And I'm happy that Diddy is, getting a fair shake in his trial, because I think that he was a fall guy for something much bigger. And the hope was, just like what happened to Harvey Weinstein, just like what happened with Bill Cosby, just like what happened with so many other individual men who were, sort of famous and powerful. They don't exist in a vacuum, but the people in the cathedral want you to believe that they do. So if it comes out that there's like, you get like a peek, it's like you get a peek inside of a keyhole at a bigger picture every time something like this happens. And the truth is that the mystique of celebrity is long past now. And people have, at least unless you're normies, like Mike was alluding to earlier, but like the younger generations, they're not starstruck in the same way. Then this stuff doesn't affect them in the same way. the whole thing about fame and clout is very decentralized now. There are people who are trying to centralize it again, but it is like not that that world that I grew up in is not the same. It's gone. So I am encouraged, no matter how many obstacles we run into, no matter how many times that we run into issues with this stuff, I am encouraged because there will be people who will have the courage to find the truth and talk about it until we get it. And so it doesn't matter how long it takes, because it could take a while, but we are working towards it. I suspect in 10 years, we will have a much different picture of everything that we're talking about and speculating on now will be very different if we have the patience and we have the will to just keep moving forward. So the truth always comes out, as I say, and I know we're going to get it. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We really have to move on because I can't go much late. I know there's going to be a long sausage because of my crash and everything, but we got to keep it rolling. So in early July, and also if we talked about the Epstein Files things, that'd be the whole show. Because I could go on and on about that. I don't want. I'm just saying I want to talk about the Texas floods and the statement the White House put out. I think those things are good to discuss. So in early July of 2025, you probably know about the flash flood that struck Texas Hill Country, particularly Kerr County, after torrential rains dumped up to 15 inches of water, causing the Guadalupe River to surge 26 feet in less than an hour. There's like a video, a time-lapse video of how fast this flood took hold. The disaster claimed at least 109 lives, with Kerr County reporting 87 deaths, including 30 children, and left dozens missing, notably 10 girls and one counselor from Camp Mystic, a Christian summer camp. Rescue efforts mobilized swiftly, involving over 1,000 personnel from a local, state, and federal agencies, including the Texas National Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, and FEMA. Helicopters, drones, boats, and K-9 units scoured the flood-ravaged areas, with 850 people rescued, 361 by air evacuations using UH-60 Blackhawks, and 159 via ground operations. Despite challenges like debris, down power lines, and continued rainfall, first responders, including standout Coast Guard swimmer Scott Ruskin, saved nearly 200 people, navigating treacherous waters and difficult terrain. Search and rescue, and so there's a lot to say about what happened with the flood in particular, but I wanted to talk about who was there to step in and save lives and do the right thing. Who stepped up? Okay, so search and rescue operations persisted around the clock, with teams combing the Guadalupe River and surrounding counties like Burnett, Travis, and Kendall, where additional fatalities were reported. The Texas Military Department and Swiftwater rescue teams from Florida aided efforts using infrared-equipped helicopters and high-water vehicles to locate survivors, some found clinging to trees or debris. However, as days passed, hopes of finding more survivors faded, with officials like Kerr County Sheriff Larry Latha noting the transition to recovery missions. Public and private support surged, with the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys, Houston Texans donating $1.5 million, while communities rallied at reunification centers like Ingram Elementary School. Despite criticism over delayed warnings and National Weather Service staff cuts, the relentless response, backed by President Trump's disaster declaration, underscored a massive coordinated effort to address one of Texas's deadliest floods. And it was like one of these things that sometimes these things happen. It was so sudden, there was no way anyone could have been ready. And I think that all things considered, the reaction was very stellar. But anyway, I'll leave it to you guys if you have any thoughts or criticisms.
Yeah. So it feels very much like California, right? When you know that there are wildfires, and what we see is a lack of governmental, responsibility, right? Because what you do for wildfires is you start fires, right? Like you burn the area. And that was cut off for some some unknown reason, like oh my goodness, I can't imagine why they would stop doing that. But I mean, this was a flood, and so it's very different. However, again, I do. I don't know anything about what happened or what. I mean, I know people lost their lives, and I'm not sure if there were things that could have been done to prevent this. It kind of also feels like Katrina, where there were measures that could have been taken and put in place that just failed to happen. So, I don't know. Who knows? We do not know. I feel so bad for the people who lost their lives there. But I feel an immense more amount of hate for the people, not hate, I don't hate people, but a disdain for the people who are, saying, "Oh, well, look what your God did." You know what I mean? It's just
There were, I think,
there's a
Destiny
lot
made
of
some crack about like the Christians dying,
yeah.
but like
Yeah.
whatever. He's an unhinged lunatic. So
Yeah, and I heard, I don't know who the people were, but I heard that there were people who actually got fired for their takes on this flood. And I don't even know how I feel about that. You know what I mean? Like I am also a free speech extremist. I think you should be able to say, unless you're in a movie theater shouting fire, I think that you should be able to say what it is that you think or believe or feel, even if you don't believe or think or feel it at all. I think
I got to interrupt you and point something out. All right, the case that people are citing when they use the shouting fired in crowded theater case was a guy who was publishing and handing out flyers. I think they called them pamphlets, but
In the First World War.
that was
right?
anti-war
Yeah.
pamphlets, right? And the argument that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater was from the losing side of that case, from the side against free speech. So you can yell fire in a crowded theater, right?
If there's a fire, specifically if there's a fire.
If there's not a fire, you can still yell. You can. It is not illegal. You can be accused of disturbing the peace. You can be accused of starting a riot if you start a riot, and you can be sued if your actions result in somebody getting trampled. But the reality is that the state doesn't interfere with your speech in that situation. The argument specifically was a losing argument in a case.
And even then, there's exceptions like doxing and swatting and specific unambiguous calls for violence.
Yeah, you have to actually break some other law with your speech in order.
You have to break it down when it comes to free speech extremism.
You can't,
like doxing and
doxing is not illegal.
No, it's not. But it's
reprehensible, but it's not illegal. In fact, swatting, the only reason that swatting is illegal is because there are process crimes committed when you swat somebody. But I'm gonna point some other things out about this. As far as and when it comes to free speech, I will say I can't remember where the saying originated, but there's an old saying, never interrupt your enemies when they're making a mistake. Mm-hmm. Let them say the most stupid, outrageous, hateful, bullshit stuff that they're going to say, because all they're going to do is turn people against themselves.
Right.
Okay. But what concerns me about this, and I'm going to draw a parallel. Well, although we didn't have the level of deaths, like we maybe had 2 people that we lost during the Memorial Day tornadoes here in Ohio. We don't get like Texas tornadoes, right? We don't get Kansas tornadoes. very, very often. We don't get anything very often that hits above F2 or EF2 or EF3. And EF3 is like a big tornado in Ohio. But once every quarter century or so, certain areas will get hit. Like the day of my wedding, not where I was getting married, but there was a EF5 tornado in Van Wert, Ohio. I got married in Bowling Green, which is not close to Van Wert, but the storm covered half the state. And there were tornadoes. We were surrounded by tornadoes and didn't even realize it. And we're used to, like, there's always, severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warnings, all this other stuff. And we've gotten to a sort of complacency, right? Where, yeah, there's a tornado warning, but what's it going to do? Throw the bicycle through the living room window? We'll just go to the basement. We'll just go to the interior room. The insurance will cover the damage. It won't be that bad, except that on the night of the Memorial Day tornadoes, there were at least 7 different tornadoes in the Miami Valley where I live that just bounced around inside the valley like a bunch of ping pong balls, or a pinball game, more like a pinball game. And because we're so used to not being scared of these things, not that scared anyway. Like we do what we're supposed to do when you hear it coming and stuff like that, but we don't panic. My husband and I were filming out our front door until I started to hear the telltale low. It's not a whistle; it's almost like a hum, but it's like almost like a conch shell sound, but deeper. And the sound, it sounds like a train on train tracks going by. And I was like, all right, everybody into the bathroom, because that's where our safe spot is. And we closed the door. I stopped filming when I said that. And the guys start heading to the bathroom and my ears popped. And I'm like, now! And I'm shoving them into the bathroom and everything. We got into the bathroom, didn't get the door shut. As, like it went over us while we were still vulnerable. If it had taken the roof off or taken down the wall or anything like that, broken through the windows, we heard the base of our greenhouse hit the kitchen when that happened, right? And the thing that struck me afterward, when I went back and looked at my video and saw the F3 tornado barreling down on our apartment complex, that I was just standing there filming, we heard the sirens. We were kind of like, oh yeah, there's a tornado somewhere, but it's not here, right? We didn't have any kind of, cable coming in, no TV. And at the time, I didn't have the local news channels app on my phone, right? So I didn't get all of the information I could have got because I wasn't using the warning systems to protect my family. And we were vulnerable. If the tornado if it had hit from a different angle, if the greenhouse base had hit the sliding glass door instead of the wall, we all could have been sucked out into it. Anything could have happened. The condo or the apartment 200 yards to the east of us got the entire roof torn off of that building. The tornado carried it down the block, dropped half of it in one shopping center's parking lot and the other half across the street. And there were people that lost their lives. There were people that lost their homes. There were areas of the valley that looked like they had been carpet bombed, right? And the next day, when I was monitoring social media, my name was trending. I had posted the video and I thought, oh shit, I didn't go viral, right? And I didn't. It was my first name, not my whole name, right? So I'm like, why the hell is Hannah trending? And I started looking into it. It's because the Bachelorette, I can't think of her last name, but the Bachelorette that was named Hannah, and she was a very attractive woman. She didn't look anything like me. She had to lecture her fans because they bitched. The women who watched that show bitched that their show, their special kind of reality soap opera, got interrupted by local meteorologist Jamie Simpson's warnings about these tornadoes. The reason that only 2 people passed away in those tornadoes was because of that man and his adamant warnings to everybody who could listen, everybody that was getting cable TV, everybody that was watching at the time, that had their televisions on. This time is different. I know people don't get desperately worried about tornadoes most of the time. This time is different. And that is what happened here. That failure, this time is different, didn't hit everybody in time. They had inadequate warning systems. Well, there's the National Weather Service. There's been news stories that have come out that administrations in some of the local areas hadn't put up the warning systems that they could have. There were some communities that should have had sirens that didn't. But the other end of it is something called normalcy bias, which is what I was describing with Ohio and tornadoes. We don't really get big tornadoes like most of the time here. But when we do, we're fucked because we didn't build for that, right? We didn't prepare for that because it's such a rare thing. We don't think about it. Now, Texas gets floods, Texas gets tornadoes, Texas gets hurricanes. They get all kinds of disasters. They get hit with a lot. Usually their warning systems are highly effective. But when you have a combination of some areas having inadequate warning systems and this normalcy bias, people die. And then it is always on men to go in and rescue. It's always on men to go in and do the cleanup. It's always on men to go in and handle the dead. It's going to be men that are going to find the bodies. Men are going to be the first people to see the bodies. Men are going to have to dig children's bodies out of the rubble. Right? Men are going to have to process that. Men had to do that after the Oklahoma bombing, and it was like the first incident I saw in my life on the news where I was hit with that a man had to process, a man who might have been somebody's father, who might have gone home and looked at his own babies and just cried afterward, is going to have to be the person to find dead children and mentally process having to go in and move their bodies out of the mess that's left behind by nature. And they're going to have maybe support in their lives. Maybe, right? If they're lucky, they'll have some women in their lives that support them. They'll have a network of men in their lives that support them, right? But most of them are going to be treated with the attitude of women like Chris Mizuno in our chat here, right? Where Bob, the firefighter or the volunteer who never had anything to do with the decision-making process or whether people at the camps were warned in time or not, whether they heeded warnings or not, is going to have to pick up the pale, bloated, limp body of a little kid and carry that body out of what will now be a swamp for the time being and process the death of that child and maybe go home and look at his own kids and feel guilty about thanking God that it wasn't them. And because we blame men every time something goes wrong, because our society hates on men as a population, instead of looking at the fact that politicians come in both sexes and the people who run the budgets have to contend with every demand feminists make while they're trying to budget for their cities and their counties and their states. They will treat Bob, who has nothing to do with that, like he deserves disdain and castigation, hate and cruelty, instead of psychological support for the job that he has to do. The job that you couldn't handle because he happens to have the same Audi parts instead of any parts as the people you want to blame.
All right. Thank you for your thoughts on that. And I look forward to seeing you guys' thoughts. I didn't get that. I did get a couple super chows, so I'm gonna look at those really quick. For some reason, they're coming up on the Social Stream Ninja. I'm not gonna worry about that right now, but I will read them. So John Doe gave us $5 and said, following Hurricane Harvey in 2017, the city of Dickinson, Texas, controversially included a requirement in its disaster relief grant applications that recipients pledge not to boycott Israel. Is that true? Thank you for that. Okay, that's weird. And then Richard Bier gives us $5 super chow and says, hearing some of TikTok comments from certain people have been terrible. Some are playing politics about the situation, and others are making it about the race of the missing campers. And the gloating about the tragedy is just awful. Yeah, well, some people are just brain rotted online. So you have to just like move on, go outside, look at regular people. I think normal people are totally like not like that. So, try to get some perspective. All right. So anyway,
I want to point out, following Hurricane Harvey, men died trying to rescue people. Men drowned
Hannah,
trying to rescue people.
The point is something Israel, though. That's what we have to just keep beating on. Stop talking about men, Hannah. What do you think this is? Some kind of men's rights YouTube channel? Anyway. So yeah, of course, like anytime there's a disaster, it's the men that are on the front lines. So, I mean, not at all surprising, but let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. And we're going to get to the last story because we're kind of over. So this was a statement put out by the White House on June 13th, 2025. I think that it's something that I haven't seen before. It may have happened before, but this time around, if it isn't the first time I've ever seen it, it seems to be uniquely like being spread around social media, because I think I point to it as evidence that what we talk about on this channel, and I'm not saying that we're the only ones, and I'm not saying that we're like the fucking pioneers, but these conversations are getting out into the mainstream. They're going out onto social media, and other people are responding to it. And this is good. This is a good thing, okay? So this is a presidential message on National Men's Health Week 2025. And here's what it reads. For far too long, the health, happiness, and well-being of our nation's men have been neglected, contributing to a troubling reality. Men in the United States have a life expectancy 5 years shorter than women. They visit healthcare providers less frequently and often delay critical care. Men tend to have their first heart attack an average of 10 years earlier than women. This neglect has been compounded by a vicious campaign against masculinity. This war on manhood has left many American men in a state of loneliness, confusion, and emptiness, with devastating consequences. Men in the United States are 4 times more likely to commit suicide and more than twice as likely to overdose than women. This National Men's Health Week, I made a solemn pledge to honor the men in America. We will always have your back, and we will never waver in our promise to embolden you to lead long, healthy, and safe lives. Just last month, I proudly signed an executive order to deliver most favored nation pricing to American patients, improve access to quality medical care, and lower the price of medications. Together with my Make America Healthy Again commission, we are empowering men to prioritize their health and prolong their lives. Under my leadership, we will relentlessly pursue a healthier future for the men of our nation. We will always lift you up rather than tear you down, and we will champion the voices, values, and wellness of hardworking American men across our country.
How dare you? How
dare you? Yes.
It's a good step. It's a good step. And I'm hoping that because we actually have strong men in the administration now, which we really haven't had for quite some time. And I don't just mean like the president, I mean across the board. Because we have strong men in the administration, because we have strong men who recognize men's humanity and the need for men's strength in the nation, we may see other things changing as well. One of the issues with regard to men's mental health, one of the biggest issues with regard to men's mental health, is feminism in the field of psychology. Right? The field of psychology is already experimental enough. Right? It's been stumbling around blind for centuries. And there's been more patient abuse than patient treatment throughout the history of that field of medicine from its inception as a recognized field of medicine. The things that worked prior to the field of psychology being a recognized field of medicine were men supporting each other. And I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again, the importance of fraternity, the thing that feminists hate the most. Men's brotherhood as human beings, men working as teams, men checking on each other, men recognizing each other and each other's needs and each other's nature, and men recognizing when another man or a boy is in crisis and understanding from a man's perspective what is needed to bring that individual closer to homeostasis out of that crisis. Right? Men being able to tell women your husband needs XYZ and know that the wife will listen because she gives enough of a shit about her husband that she wants him to be okay and not in crisis. Right? And men knowing that they would come home to care and love and support, home cooked meals and affection and a listening ear, and not bitch, bitch, moan, moan, whine, whine, nag, nag, nag. I want a divorce and I want half or more of everything that you're ever going to earn. And I don't care if you kill yourself, I'm going to take it anyway. Right? Before we had people delving into how the brain works, men knew what other men needed. Right? The field of psychology can be great, and men can be helped when they have something that is there's a need to address it with medical intervention. Right? When men are suffering from something like schizophrenia or depression that's caused from chemical changes, and things like that, it's important that they are able to go to a physician for those treatments without being told, well, the real problem is your toxic masculinity. Well, the real problem is, how dare you have feelings about what your wife is doing? How dare you have feelings about being kicked out of your family? How dare you have feelings about not being supported? How dare you feel lonely just because every space in your country where men were allowed to gather without female supervision, without female interference, without female nagging, and without women acting like a virus coming in and demanding the environment be changed to suit their needs. It's all been taken away. How dare you feel upset about that? How dare you be affected by that? Right? Men need to be able to seek treatment without those demonizations, without those castigations, and to be able to work on real problems that they're having. A man needs to be able, if he is a drug addict or an alcoholic, or has an anger management problem, or has been sexually abused and is contending with the damage that that causes in his life, to work on those issues without being told what they owe women, without being told that the flaw really is that they're too manly and not womanly enough. And until those things change, we've got a lot more steps to take. But this is encouraging. What we just read here is very encouraging, because this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this from our federal government. And I hope that this indicates that they may take some of those other steps.
Mike?
No, I'm done. We've been going for 2 hours, folks. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
It's been a great show.
Yeah, it's despite the technical difficulties. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I'm not one for obviously like top-down change, but like an acknowledgement of the issue is what is most important. Like, I don't know, like, again, presidents are like kings or prime ministers. They're not genies. They don't grant wishes. They don't just give you what you want. But if they like point like towards the correct way, like, you know, like a compass, they point you north towards what is right, then you should encourage that and push for that. Okay. And so like, this is a good message that other people should use to sort of like, you know, get behind, because this kind of sentiment would have been impossible in 2015. Impossible. Remember, in 2015, and I know Canada's not the US, but Justin Trudeau famously said what? When they said, hey, why do you think it's so important that you have, you know, half your cabinet be women? And he said, because it's 2015. And that was enough. He didn't even have to explain it. And everybody cheered for that. We thought it was ridiculous. This kind of sentiment could not have been done without destroying your political career. It would have been like kryptonite, right? And now it's okay. And that's what I'm saying. That's why this matters. So it's not
President
really about,
Trump has already
I know he's spoken out about, he's spoken out in defense of men before. Like before his first run in 2015, he said men have a lot of problems too. And he got a lot of shit for that. Trevor Noah did a whole fucking segment on it. Everybody went down on him because they could not conceive of the idea that men in any capacity could be seen as people in need of some support. And
that's why we do need top-down change in this, right? Because this is a top-down problem. This is a top-down problem. Okay. Our federal government has funded the influx of feminism into psychology and every other area of medicine. It's not something that everybody needs to understand this. And we've done episodes on this in HBR talk. Feminism is not a grassroots movement. It was never a grassroots a grassroots movement. It's been from the very beginning. It has been women in elite families with elite connections using their connections and their families as a means of promoting political ideology. And there has always been government involvement. There's always been government intervention on behalf of feminists, right down to feminists even being able to argue that it's God's will that men's children be taken away from them in divorce, and actually get laws passed as a result of that. That's basically Carolyn Norton's whole argument in a nutshell.
Sure.
God decided this is the way it should be. And because a woman said it, that was enough to make it law, right? So this is a top-down issue. It's not top-down solutions. It's reform of top-down corruption that is taking place.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
And this is definitely the first step on that pathway.
Right. But I think we should be encouraged. That's
Oh
all.
yeah.
Be
Because
encouraged.
previously
because
you
that's
couldn't
what
step
you
foot on
wouldn't-
that pathway.
No, it would not have been okay to say. And now
You had
it
to get a
is. And
president.
you
had to
know
get a
it's
president who could be buried in political kryptonite and
Yeah.
come roaring out yelling fight, fight, instead of falling to the wayside and letting somebody
Right.
else take over in his place.
right. But also, if this wasn't such a threat to people in power, just saying this about men, the UN women wouldn't be putting out like piece after piece after piece, fretting over the manosphere and the red pill and stuff.
That's
Everyone's
right.
coming after the manosphere and the red pill because they are the red pill and the manosphere. That includes us. I include us in that because the reality is, no matter what you think we should be associated with, we are being lumped in with them. That is making massive impacts in like the bottom levels because it's all like, grassroots stuff. Like I would say we are the grassroots, right? And so they can't stop that because the grassroots stuff is very difficult to eliminate because it's not centralized, right? So they're concerned about men getting something. I already talked about that French story with the incels. It's the same thing. The people in power are afraid. They're afraid of men finding the will to essentially like question authority, which is why they don't like men having that, because that's what men are going to do. Women aren't going to do that. Men are going to do that. So anyway, we got to quit because we're way over, but I just want to say this is very encouraging and I think you guys should be encouraged by it. And I think it's a good thing overall. But now we're going to go into the patron show. We're going to look at this. It's going to be a short one, maybe a half hour, because I can't be up late. I'm sorry about what happened with the computer and everything. But if you want to join us for that, go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe, or just go to badgernation.online and join the Discord server. So at least you can like get a peek at it and check it out, see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News. Sorry about all the technical problems, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. See you next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.